Good evening, everyone. I am Tatiana Jenkins, and I'll be presenting my data mining final project from Virginia State University. The project I selected was Sample 2, which project focused on image category classification using deep learning. A little history about convolutional neural networks, better known as CNNs, which will be a focus in this project. This is a way of deep learning that was inspired by biological processing research that was completed in the 1960s to learn more about animal vision. These tests were conducted on cats and monkeys. Connecting this to CNN, or the deep learning that we'll be using in my project, came from researcher Hubel and Weasel creating and solidifying the layers used to process the mammal's eye responses to visually overlapping items of one another. Convolutional neural networks consist of input layers, output layers, and hidden layers, which all play a major role when it comes to accomplishing actually classifying images to collect data. Introduction. This project will hold a key focus of convolutional neural networks, which is a way of deep learning as stated. This technique will allow for large and diverse images to be classified. In this specific sample of MapWorks, a flower-based dataset was used to extract data and classify images using multilinear SVM-trained classifiers with CNN features to be extracted from these images. Convolutional neural networks can be found in things we use on a day-to-day basis, like tagging photos on Facebook, because when you tag someone on Facebook, you're practically identifying them based on the facial features of the picture that you may have posted. Also, when you drive vehicles. This process of classifying images requires an input and output. The input being the photo, if we use the Facebook as an example, and the output class, which could be a flower, in this prime example of the project, and the probability of the flower being the output. So when you call this flower to action, if the data is correct, it will come out as an output. It is said that CNNs is ideally used for processing two-dimensional images and don't have much pre-processing, which makes it an accurate way of deep learning in this technique. So the methodology used to conduct my research. First, I created a workspace in MATLAB to conduct my coding. I created and downloaded the dataset as instructed in the Sample 2 project, being Flower Dataset 5, which consisted of 5 different flowers. These flowers being daisies, dandelions, roses, sunflowers, and tulips. Then I downloaded the image. I loaded the images, loaded the pre-trained network, calling different commands in my coding, set up a test for the set images, pre-processed the images, and use these support vector machine trained classifiers for image features to be cross-examined and to be evaluated. The data description. So the dataset that I used for sample 2 consisted of classified trained images that needed to be downloaded from the label, which was the flowers dataset, to MATLAB. And as stated, this dataset consisted of 5 different images of different flowers, being the daisy, the dandelion, roses, sunflowers, and tulips. When the selected daisy, which will be shown in figure 1 when the project is ran, it was called to be displayed and generated the image from the exact file based upon its location, and a table was created to show how many images there were per category. So when you watch the demonstration, you'll see a specific number set to pull a specific daisy that was in the data file. Now let's close this and go to our demonstration. Excuse me. So here in MATLAB, we have step-by-step how I conducted the study. The first step was to download the image, and it pulled the daisy here. It called the daisy to the data set here and displayed the image, as you can see. It was called to find the image. The next set of instructions was to create a table, which was created to see how many flower images there were per data set. So there were 633 daisies, 898 dandelions, 641 roses to choose from, 699 sunflowers, and 799 tulips. But based upon the max number set and the number that is called, which is what will come out, which was the daisy as shown here. Going through the research here, Here, a plot graph was created just to show the different layers that the image had to go through for processing to test it, as it states here as well, just to classify and categorize the input size of the actual image. Images have to be classified and resized in order for it to run properly. Normally, convolutional neural networks are able to run large images and very diverse images, but it is easier when the data set is balanced. So here, as you can see, the maximum was set to 100, which changed the minimum and max images that can be counted in this data set to go through the convolutional neural network layers to be 100 per one. So I'm just going to run this for you guys so you guys can see. So you can see it's downloading the data set, which was step 1 here. It'll pull up the graph prior to it being balanced, which is a part of actually the support vector machine technique when it comes to linear classifying training. Just taking a little second to load. And running the demonstrations usually do take longer, just depending on your actual connectivity to the data, your Wi-Fi connection, and what exactly you're running. Just a quick tip. There was supposed to be an image displayed here that showed the depiction of the, here we go. So this is what the image looks like when it goes through, when it goes through the first layer of the convolutional neural network. This was used just to show the depiction of the images. When you use the SVM train classifier along while you're trying to pull the convolutional neural network features, it'll pull primitive images. So what that means is it'll pull it, but it's showing blobs and different edges of the image to show the detail in this. The further it goes through the convolutional neural network, being that this is the first layer, the more distinct the images will be. And at the end, this is just showing the processing of the image here, and it tests different labels able to read the image along with its location. So once the daisy is called, the daisy will come out. So the test label is a daisy and the predicted label will be the daisy. Just to go to the sample project for you for further explanation here of this layer, which I found most interesting. As you can see, the deep layers use different activation methods for these things to be called. So when it goes through certain layers, you have to actually classify them and name them for them to be pulled out correctly. When you're using the SVM classifier now, using different commands and things like that, train the data set for it to move a little bit faster. So when I spoke about previously about balancing, I can show you here, about balancing the data set, this is a major important thing just because when you are going furthermore in the project to use the SVM classifier training, it allows it for the results to be unbiased. So the more balanced the data set is, which is why you reset it to 100 being the maximum per count for each image, the data will be more accurate. The SVM training classifier just allows it, to run a little bit quicker than normal as well. So in conclusion, for this project, image classification can be done in so many different ways, but convolutional neural networks just has been a major thing when it comes to using diverse images, especially when you run it with the support vector machine training. It is way quicker, it's way more accurate, and it allows for the pre-trained data that is already set to be run a little bit more smoother. Here are my references, and thank you.